I grew up playing Dynasty Warriors, and Dynasty Warriors 3 was my introduction into the series. I grew very fond of the characters, and even though this point isn't combat related, I was pleasantly surprised to see that Wo Long is set in the Three Kingdoms era. They look really good, and I think they designed them well, and getting a chance to play with these heroes again is a lot of fun. But if you clicked on this video, then you're here for the thing I'm focusing my channel on, the combat breakdown. So let's not waste any time and just get right into it. Being that this is a Team Ninja game, it carries some similarities to other Team Ninja titles. The combat revolves around a meter at the bottom of the screen, the spirit gauge. It is the resource you manage to complete actions in combat. I think the concept and presentation is supposed to be yin and yang. But what is yin and yang? Yin and yang is a concept that originated in Chinese philosophy, describing an opposite but interconnected self-perpetuating cycle. Yin and yang can be thought of as complementary and at the same time opposing forces that interact to form a dynamic system in which the whole is greater than the assembled parts, and the parts are important for cohesion of the whole. In Chinese cosmology, the universe creates itself out of a primary chaos of material energy, organized into the cycles of yin and yang, form and matter. Yin is retractive, passive and contractive in nature, while yang is repelling, active and expansive in principle. This dichotomy in some form is seen in all things in nature, patterns of change and difference. I ripped that right from Wikipedia. But it's important because I believe when they created this system, yin and yang was the primary inspiration. Basic attacks and deflecting build spirit. Heavy attacks, martial arts, and wizardry spells expend it. There is a constant ebb and flow to how this game should be played. But how is the spirit gauge different from the MP system in Stranger of Paradise, Ki in Neo, or even stamina in Elden Ring? In Stranger of Paradise, MP isn't tied to your combat performance such that if you use it all and get hit, you'll be in a crumpled state. That's the break gauge. However, Ki is tied to that. Yes, that means I have begun playing Neo 2 as you all have suggested, and once I'm done, I will make a video. I will say this much though, the Kusarigama is easily my favorite weapon so far. However, back to the point, you do not build Ki from attacking in Neo like you do in Stranger of Paradise with MP. So, the spirit gauge is a combination of Ki and MP. Using all your spirit and getting hit puts you in a crumple state, and you're vulnerable to taking damage. There is no penalty that I know of for spirit reaching its max value, but you could think of it as wasted attack potential. Balancing attacking and defending is key here, yin and yang. You and the enemies have your own spirit bar. The idea is to build your spirit while reducing theirs through attacks. You are in a sense disrupting the internal balance of the enemies you fight to weaken them, and when you fully deplete their spirit, you can punish them for big health damage. The Cestus and staff punishes had me hyped every time I used them. With that, let's talk a little more in depth about the attacks. There are two attack buttons in this game, X or square for basic attacks that build spirit, and Y or triangle for heavy attacks that cost spirit. I grew up playing Phantasy Star Online for the Dreamcast and essentially when it got ported to the GameCube, and it drilled the idea of light, heavy into my mind to the point that I can't help but keep that philosophy in any game that features light and heavy attacks. And I kept with it in this game. Sometimes I press 4 times, but the point I'm trying to make is I could not get away from finishing a light combo with a heavy attack, and it worked out fine in my opinion. Along with light and heavy attacks, there are skills called martial arts. They are somewhat similar to combo abilities in Stranger of Paradise, but how they work really, really pissed me off. Not how they function. Using them is great. I highly recommend using them because they do a lot of spirit damage to enemies. But what I hate is that they are tied to randomly appearing on a weapon. That is a major negative to me. Yes, Stranger of Paradise had combos that were tied to weapons as well, but I hated it in that game too. But getting 400% affinity with the basic job that had that weapons combos tied to it unlocks all of that weapons combos, so there was a way around it. Fortunately, once you do find a weapon that has what you want, you can just upgrade it. So no, I don't like the RNG aspect of the martial arts, but there is an acceptable way to deal with it. The initial problem though is finding it. Because Team Ninja insists on doing gear this way, you're just bombarded with lines and lines of gear to sift through. Gear just feels like a completely trivial and tedious part of their games, and they really need to rethink gear in my opinion. There are some ranged attack options that you can do, but outside of the tutorial, I really didn't use them. The final attack option that you have are wizardry spells, and they are unlocked through a skill tree. You gain points through leveling that you can spend on the element you want, and you can even buy spells that you have access to but cannot use unless you have the corresponding points allocated to that specific element's level. The wizardry spells have different types. There is ranged magic. You can imbue weapons with an element, and buffs and debuffs to give you an advantage in combat. The wizardry spells are more effective than they initially seem. While they add a second source of damage in a lot of cases and can exploit a weakness of an enemy, the real benefit that I've experienced is once the element debuff fills completely, it will interrupt the afflicted enemy for a damage window. So, if you aren't using these, you might be missing out on some damage potential. I will say I don't feel like these spells have good identity. When reviewing them, many of them felt like just different colors of the same thing, and I found that to be pretty disappointing. There is a super move mechanic where you can summon a divine beast. I'm not a big fan of using super moves like this, and I didn't use it a ton. Sometimes maybe when I was surrounded by many enemies, I would use it, but overall, it's just not something that I use. In any game, really. Okay. If you are familiar with my values as a gamer so far from the videos I made or the one video I made, I favor defense over offense. It's because I feel like that is where the greatest opportunity for skill expression exists for any game. Wolong only features 2 defensive measures. Pressing circle executes a deflect, and pressing it twice quickly in succession will cause you to dodge. While only having those 2 is initially disappointing, I want to talk about the deflect a bit more in depth because it reveals something important about the concept of flow that I mentioned in my first video. I prefer when the transitional time period between attack and defense, the way I define flow, to be as minimal as possible. And Wolong does a really good job of facilitating that with their system. I feel maybe they wanted their own Sekiro style game when designing it, but I can't make that claim for sure. It just feels like that is in its design. Okay, let's look at this moment again here. When did I stop attacking to execute the deflects? Being able to ride the line is what I live for. Having a simple system isn't bad when the system flows really well. But there's a bit more to this deflect mechanic than meets the eye, and I want to introduce you to the concept of rolling. This is somewhat of a subset of the flow concept. In the movie Shaolin Soccer, the main character, Mighty Steel Leg, kicks the ball with such awesome force, a really cool animation illustrating just how powerful the kick plays. This is setting up how strong the opposing team is when the goalie easily stops the kick with one hand. Now I'm showing you this to illustrate a concept about defense. Stopping the ball like this is opposing a force, so think of that as something like blocking in a game. And sometimes you just redirect an attack, or you swat it away like parrying. At the end of the movie, when Mui takes over as the goalie, she has a completely different approach. Instead of resisting the force or redirecting the force, she rolls with it. Then she returns that force back at them. This same concept is possible in Wo Long. If you press circle or B at the same time as the R1 button, you will deflect and counter with a weapon switch. So why do you even want to do this? Well, it does the opposite of the Spirit Punish. A Spirit Punish consumes the positive spirit you've built up to add damage to the attack. A roll counter or deflect counter will purge negative spirit. This allows you to stay aggressive with heavy attacks, martial arts, and wizardry spells. Or you can flip the momentum if you've been taking damage. Even though the deflect button functions like a parry, it's not. And I wouldn't think of this as a parry because the way fights are constructed is a little bit different. My favorite fight that I want to break down in another video completely was against Zhang Lao. This was such an awesome fight to go through. It's quite a spectacle to see. His attacks are fantastic and flashy. Because this game uses the deflecting mechanic instead of blocking, dodging, and parrying, you roll with him. And it is a really cool concept to me. I would like to see a game that doesn't choose one or the other. A game that has all the options of Stranger of Paradise and this rolling deflect from Wo Long would be a dream come true. So, overall, I really love Wo Long. Like Stranger of Paradise, I haven't been able to do much endgame, so I'm certain I'm missing out on some things. I will revisit all of these games to experience the endgame, and I will update any new information or mechanics I find. But for now, my determination for Wo Long's combat is rank A. I won't do this for every video, but let me explain the subtle difference between S and A in my mind. I'm sure that by now you've seen the Raining Swords parry that I've put in a few videos, but let's talk about that for a moment. Stranger of Paradise offers 5 ways to deal with this attack. Level 1, Beginner, hold guard. Level 2, Adept, dodge out of the way. Level 3, Advanced, Soul Shield. Level 4, Expert, phase through. And level 5, Master, parry. I can use any one of these tools to deal with this attack as I see fit. Stranger of Paradise doesn't put any definite strategy on any given attack presented. It's up to you to decide where to use them. But with any given attack in Wo Long, no matter what it is, what am I supposed to be doing? I really only need to get good at deflecting. Me and any other player that pick up this game have the same goal when dealing with attacks. So while Wo Long's combat is great, and it nails flow by letting you roll and counter, the skill expression ceiling is lower in my opinion. You can kinda think of S to me as S for skill expression. So for me, that's an A combat rating. And A is not bad at all. It's definitely a game I would recommend. I think even B rated combat is good as long as it's fun, but I will likely not recommend something that is C rank or lower. And if you're wondering, I will expand on what is B and lower as I play them. With that, I really hope you enjoy this game as much as I did. I had a lot of fun, and it was a real joy playing in the Three Kingdoms once again.